Have you ever had that feeling? That spine-chilling sensation that you're not alone, even when you're sure you are? The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes, those mysteries brush up against our reality in ways we can't explain. Today, we are rediving deep into the shadows to explore 3 true paranormal stories that will make you question what is real. These accounts come from ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinarily unsettling situations. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to be spooked. Our first story takes us to a quiet, historic town in New England, where a young couple, Mark and Sarah, bought their dream home. It was a beautiful colonial-era house, complete with creaky floorboards and a history that stretched back centuries. They were thrilled, picturing a future filled with cozy nights by the fireplace, but their dream quickly soured into a nightmare. It started subtly, a misplaced set of keys, a door left ajar that they were certain they had closed. They brushed it off as forgetfulness, the quirks of an old house, but the odd occurrences began to escalate. One evening, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard faint, melodic music, box notes drifting down from the second floor. She called out to Mark, assuming he was upstairs, but he answered from the living room, right behind her. A cold dread washed over her. They cautiously went upstairs to investigate. The music led them to a small, unused bedroom at the end of the hall. As they pushed the door open, the music abruptly stopped. The room was empty, cold, and a thick layer of dust covered every surface. There was no music box to be found. The activity grew more intense. They would hear whispers in the dead of night, the disembodied voices of a man and a woman in hushed, urgent conversation. Objects would move on their own. One morning, they came downstairs to find every single kitchen cabinet wide open, the contents undisturbed. The most terrifying incident happened to Mark. He woke up in the middle of the night, paralyzed with fear. Standing at the foot of their bed was the shadowy figure of a tall man wearing what looked like a top hat. The figure just stood there watching them, an oppressive, malevolent presence filling the room. Mark tried to scream to move to wake Sarah, but he was frozen. After what felt like an eternity, the figure slowly dissolved into the darkness. They started researching the history of their home. What they discovered chilled them to the bone. In the late 1800s, the house had been owned by a wealthy merchant who tragically lost his wife to a sudden illness. Consumed by grief, he became a recluse. Neighbors reported strange noises and sightings around the property. He was eventually found in the master bedroom, having taken his own life. The previous owners had failed to disclose this dark history. Unable to endure the constant psychological torment, Mark and Sarah sold the house at a loss, warning the new owners of what they had experienced. To this day, the house is said to be one of the most active paranormal hotspots in the region. Our second story comes from a group of college students who decided to go on a camping trip in the desolate, sprawling wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. For friends Liam, Chloe, Ben, and Maya were looking for an adventure, a break from their studies. They hiked for hours, deep into the forest, far from any marked trails, until they found a secluded clearing to set up camp. As the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows through the ancient trees, an unsettling quiet fell over the woods. The usual chorus of nocturnal animals was completely silent. As they sat around the campfire, sharing stories, Liam noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A flicker of movement in the dense tree line. He pointed it out to the others, but they saw nothing. They teased him, saying he was just spooked by the dark, but the feeling of being watched was palpable. Later that night, as they tried to sleep, they were jolted awake by a sound that didn't belong in the forest. It was a high-pitched wailing cry, almost like a woman screaming, but distorted, unnatural. It echoed through the trees, seeming to come from all directions at once. Then, it was followed by a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the ground. Panic set in. They huddled together in one tent, their hearts pounding. Suddenly they heard heavy bipedal footsteps circling their campsite. Snap, crack, the sound of twigs breaking under a significant weight. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, as if whatever was out there was studying them. Ben, the bravest of the group, unzipped the tent flap just a crack to peek outside. The campfire had died down to embers, but in the faint moonlight, he saw it. A tall, emaciated figure, impossibly thin with limbs that were too long for its body, was standing just beyond the clearing. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark. It turned its head in a jerky, unnatural motion, and its gaze locked onto the tent. Ben zipped the tent shut, his face ashen. He whispered what he saw, and terror seized the group. They stayed completely still, barely breathing, as the creature continued to circle their camp for what felt like hours. The footsteps were accompanied by scratching sounds on the outside of their tent. Just as the first light of dawn began to break through the canopy, the sounds stopped. There was only silence. They waited, too afraid to move, until the sun was fully up. When they finally summoned the courage to look outside, there was no trace of the creature. But etched into the dirt all around their campsite were strange, three-toed tracks. Unlike any animal they knew, they packed up in a frenzy, leaving most of their gear behind, and practically ran back the way they came. They never spoke of the specific details of that night to anyone else. But the shared trauma of their encounter in the Appalachian woods haunts them to this day. Many who hear their story believe they encountered a creature from folklore known as the Wendigo. For our final tale, we journey to Japan, to the infamous Aokigahara Forest, also known as the Sea of Trees. It has a tragic reputation as a place where many choose to end their lives. This story comes from Kenji, a forest guide who used to lead patrols to help prevent such tragedies. He had seen many sorrowful things in that forest, but one particular experience remains burned into his memory. One afternoon, Kenji was on a routine patrol with his partner, when their compasses started spinning wildly. GPS and cell service were non-existent, a common phenomenon in the forest due to its rich magnetic iron deposits. But this was different. An unnatural cold spot seemed to envelop them, and the air grew heavy. They called out, following protocol, asking if anyone needed help. Their voices were swallowed by the dense, silent trees. Pushing through some thick undergrowth, they stumbled into a small, hidden clearing. In the center of the clearing was a single, tattered red child's shoe. There were no other signs of a person, no footprints, no discarded items, just the shoe. As Kenji bent down to examine it, he heard the faint, unmistakable sound of a child giggling. It was close, too close. He and his partner froze, exchanging a look of pure confusion and fear. They were miles from any town. Deep in a forest, no parent would ever bring a child. They called out again, their voices trembling. "Is anyone there? Are you okay?" The giggling continued, seeming to move around them, dancing just at the edge of their hearing. It was playful, yet utterly terrifying in its context. They began to feel a deep, overwhelming sense of sadness, a crushing despair that seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. Kenji described it as a wave of pure hopelessness washing over him, making his legs feel weak. His partner was pale, his eyes wide with terror. They knew they had to leave. As they turned to go, they heard one final sound. A child's voice, clear as day, whispered directly behind them, "Don't leave me." They didn't look back. They ran, scrambling through the trees, ignoring the branches that scratched at their faces. They didn't stop until they were back on a familiar trail, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as suddenly as it had descended. They never found any record of a missing child in the area. Kenji believes they encountered a yurei, a restless spirit, perhaps of a child who became lost or was abandoned in the forest long ago. He eventually left his job as a guide, unable to shake the memory of that giggling voice and the profound sorrow of the Aokigahara Forest. From a haunted house in New England, to a mysterious creature in the Appalachians, and a lost spirit in Japan's Sea of Trees. These stories remind us that there are things in this world that defy easy explanation. Are they simply tricks of the mind, or are they glimpses into a reality that exists just beyond our perception? That's for you to decide. What do you think? Have you ever had a paranormal experience? Share your stories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the unknown. Stay safe, and sleep tight.